Well, good afternoon, everyone. Apologise for the 10-minute delay. I have a statement to read out and we'll take questions afterwards. We are here today to express our huge disappointment with the nature, intent and content of the public statements made recently by the WRU. Choosing to address the issues we all face in the public arena and with seemingly no regard or respect for privacy of individuals or organisations, or indeed the impact of their actions on Welsh rugby's reputation and how the game is viewed by our supporters, players and rugby community at large. We have thought long and hard about the best way to respond to such actions and have considered our position very seriously and carefully, and that we will continue as we go forward. We share the public's frustration with the current climate and culture in which Welsh rugby now sits, following the latest public statements from the Welsh Rugby Union. We are frankly embarrassed by some of the propaganda and damaging speculation and comment that is being played out in certain sections of the Welsh media, irrespective of the actual facts. The leadership of the governing body of the Welsh Rugby Union has to look hard in the mirror as to why the standing of the game in Wales is the current state it is. As the governing body that should lead and set the standards and perform for the profile of the game in Wales, the regions would question the tactics of the WRU executive, led by Roger Lewis, in bringing what was a democratic and agreed process via the PRGB and Memorandum of Understanding to a grinding halt. The four regions of the WRU signed and agreed a Memorandum of Understanding in November 2012 that outlined the creation of the PRGB. On the basis of this agreement, the PRG met once in December, on December 17, 2012. The regions have not changed or altered in any way their interpretation, understanding, intent, or commitment to the agreements reached since the first proposals were made in May 2012. We are therefore calling for an independent arbitrator to assess why this duly agreed democratic process has been halted. We are bewildered as to why the Welsh Rugby Union could have not made its comments known to us at a meeting of the Welsh Rugby Union and regions in the week running up to Judgment Day, choosing instead not to mention that at a management board meeting, but instead to issue demands via a press statement that day after the inaugural Welsh Derby doubleheader. Regional Rugby Wales, on behalf of the four regions, will write to the Welsh Rugby Union to respectfully decline their individual invitations to the four regional organisations to attend a summit at the Welsh Rugby Union and explain why we would rather discuss the future of Welsh Rugby and its solutions via the agreed PRGB. Regional Rugby Wales urges the Welsh Rugby Union not to sidetrack discussions or detract from the recommendations of the Welsh Rugby Union's own independent report undertaken by PricewaterhouseCoopers and completed in 2012. The regions would question why the PRGB has not been taken forward by the WRU and request that it is formally submitted to arbitration to see where the fault lies in this process. The regions would question why the WRU is now seemingly ignoring its own independent report and the proper process for the professional game board, i.e. the PRGB, that it signed up to take things forward, instead choosing to revert to a historical debate on central contracts. RRW deplores the seemingly cynical way that a talented, young, grown Welsh international, homegrown international, has been placed in the centre of a high-profile public debate as part of a public statement by the WRU to highlight issues of Welsh rugby. The regions work in a spirit of unity and purpose, and with clear trust, goodwill and openness during the process of the PricewaterhouseCoopers report and the subsequent establishment of the PRGB. Sharing sensitive financial information with the sole desire to improve the state of the game in Wales something all 4 regions passionately support and believe in. The findings of the independent report made it clear there was no one bullet solution, including disregarding central contracts as an initiative which would not address the key fundamental issues facing Welsh Rugby as a whole. There are many challenges facing Welsh Rugby, and today showed the determination of this room from the Welsh regional game to take things forward and act with transparency. We are not hiding behind a statement or corporate speak. We are here today as people that care about the future of Welsh Rugby, that feel passionately about it and want to see things put right. But only in a transparent and collaborative way and the right path, and that is through the PRGB. We have also had 4 chairmen from the regions here in support of all our 4 chief executives. Many of these gentlemen, of course, have been part of the support that's seen £40 million of benefactors' own money put into the development of Welsh Rugby for now more than a decade. We also have with us the author of the Memorandum of Understanding, independent advisor Stephen Harrison, who was duly elected to a strategic working group by the WRU and the regions to set about formulating the Memorandum of Understanding. As regions, we would like to be absolutely transparent on our position. It is clear that the PricewaterhouseCoopers report had a clear strategy is required for Welsh Rugby and for it to survive and prosper. The Memorandum of Understanding signed by the Union and the 4 regions in November 2012 agreed democratic representation on the newly established PRGB with an independent chairman with a casting vote. After the first meeting of the PRGB, the WRU withdrawn from negotiations and made an alternative offer to continue with the existing management board with a non-voting chairman and to rename it the PRGB. This creates a false impression that something has changed. We do not want to be part of something that is not transparent or democratic. As a result, the 4 regions are only happy to rely upon the judgment of the voting independent chairman at the head of PRGB to act logically in assisting the parties to move forward. We have confidence in the WRU's choice of chairman of the PRGB, as we are confident he will act with logic and integrity both for the benefit for all of Welsh Rugby. We were very happy with how he chaired the first meeting and the support and advice he has provided outside the meeting. We note that the request of the first and only meeting of the PRGB on December 17th, 2012, the independent chairman of the PRGB requested that Roger Lewis and his WRU executive put forward a clear strategy to take the game forward in Wales. This has never been produced. The professional game in Wales is in decline. We need solid, democratic action to halt that. Continuing to reduce bank debt, investing in hospitality boxes and other capital schemes are strategic choices made by the WRU, which may or may not be the best use of resources, and we are not in a position to judge. However, it is all about strategic choice. We continue to uphold the PwC report that clearly states greater collaboration is required between the WRU and the regions, as currently the structure is not viable. We do not believe that this should be about control of the elite game in Wales. PwC recommended better collaboration and how finances are used for the protection and development of Welsh Rugby, including the international game, the professional game, the Premiership and the community game. It was seen the voices and pleas for help from the grassroots of Welsh Rugby are not being heard, as the Welsh Rugby Union's preoccupation continues with the elite headline tier of the game. In light of the region's position, Regional Rugby Wales put the following questions to the WRU for transparency and purpose. They are: why is the WRU executive now not comfortable with having an independent chairman with voting rights to preside over the PRGB. When will the WRU put forward its strategy for the future of the game in Wales to the board of PRGB, as requested at the first meeting of the board? Does the Welsh Rugby Union consider it is acting with integrity as it seeks to play out its position in the public arena, first without reference or discussions with the four regions, and an opportunity to discuss privately? Why are the Welsh Rugby Union focusing primarily on central contracts when its own independent report highlighted this was not the solution for Welsh rugby? Have the statements they have issued been fully supported and endorsed by the board of the Welsh Rugby Union? That's the statement from RRW. Thank you for your time and attention. We'll be happy now to take questions.
Would you like to direct your questions to Stuart, who will then table them out to the rest of the group in front of you?
Stuart, do we presume then that there's zero dialogue between yourselves and the union currently?
We believe the PRGB is the vehicle for that dialogue. The union have chosen to withdraw from it and put forward to us last week a management board which has been the same for the last 8 years, with no casting vote. We believe the PRGB is the place to be debating all the issues of the regional professional game.
Central contracts are non-starter as far as the regions are concerned.
Well, central contracts in isolation are an issue because they will not clear the issue of how do we survive in regional rugby. Taking central contracts in isolation is not the way. There are lots more things that this PRGB can discuss with an independent chairman arbitrating and casting his vote as he sees fit to take the professional game forward in Wales. I will add, not in this statement, that we've had, or the four chairmen of regional rugby of the four regions have had a letter from Roger Lewis this week asking to attend this summit at the end of April to discuss central contracts. We will be replying to that and saying we want to do it through the PRGB. That is the vehicle to take the game forward. That is the vehicle that we've all agreed on. That is the vehicle that the WRU has signed up to. That is the vehicle recommended by their PricewaterhouseCoopers report.
Did the report say why it thought central contracts could work in Welsh rugby? Because people will inevitably ask, well, if they work so well for other sports, England cricket, for example, other rugby nations, New Zealand, Ireland, why can they not work in Welsh rugby?
Steve Harrison will answer that question.
I think looking at it from the problems faced by Welsh rugby, I think it's a possibility that central contracts can work. I think everyone can see that as a potential solution, but there's no detail at the moment on central contracts. Also, on its own, it isn't going to be a solution to the problems. And I think, as what Stuart has said, is that it needs to be discussed within the context of a whole strategy for Welsh rugby, not just picking solutions. And the four regions see it very much as trying to come up with a holistic approach for throughout the game of Welsh, throughout the game of rugby in Wales, rather than just looking at isolated solutions on which no one has a great deal of detail at the moment.
Is there an agreement in place at the moment between the regions that says we won't field any player on a central contract?
Yes, there is.
Why did you feel the need to sign that agreement? What are you afraid of?
We're not afraid of anything. We are just protecting our own position. We do not know, because there is no dialogue regarding the PRGB. We do not know what the union's view is on central contracts. What is their view of central contracts? How much are they prepared to invest into central contracts? What is the release of the players back to the regions, etc., etc., etc. So in that case, we have protected ourselves by any attempt by the WRU to to circumvent the regions and place these players somewhere else.
They claim that the £6 million they give you isn't being spent on protecting the senior players. What do you say to that?
Well, they can claim what they like, but let's be clear about the 6 million first and foremost. The 6 million is not for player release. They use that in their statements. If you look at our participation agreement signed in 2009, there is split in there of what player release money is. Out of the 6 million, 2.7 is a core grant. Another 2.4 is to keep the Welsh, non-Welsh qualified player quota down under an agreed limit. Player release is about less than 1.5. So don't be misled by statements that say 6 million is being paid for player release. It isn't.
Stuart, why do you think the union have got cold feet about this independent chair?
I wish I knew. You will have to ask that question of Roger Lewis and the WRU.
Stuart, you concerned, Stuart, that what the Welsh Rugby Union may be doing is looking to drive the regions to the wall, to squeeze you so hard that financially you can't carry on and you come in and pick up the pieces without incurring any liabilities?
Paul, I can't answer that because I don't know. All I will reiterate is the way forward is through the PRGB, through the Memorandum of Understanding, signed by the Union and signed by the regions. We wonder, as the question from the floor was, why they've now withdrawn their support. Only they can answer that.
Do the regions have confidence in the current leadership of the union?
That is not a question for us, that's a question for the governing body. And the board of directors and the chairman of the WRU. It's not an issue that we have an opinion on. That is for others to decide.
No opinion at all on whether or not, you mentioned Roger Lewis, whether or not he's effectively run the union in the relationship with you?
That is for others to judge.
Stuart, the WRU, I mean, I understand the sensitivities around the individual, but given George North has probably been a catalyst for this, the union said that the Scarlets had offered him to other clubs without his knowledge. True or false?
That is a question I'm not prepared to answer. It's an individual, again, about a young individual, but Mark Davis, the Chief Executive of the Scarlets, was here, and he will give you what information he can on that position.
Okay, I'll reiterate the statement that we made on Sunday, which is that as a business, our values and our policy is that we don't believe it's appropriate to comment on any individual. I believe that's fair on the individual, whether that's player, coach, management or otherwise. Now, outside of that, I will also state categorically that any discussions that Scarlets have at any time regarding any player are held either with that player or more generally, as is industry practice, with that player's representative. That is also our very strong policy. We do not hold any conversations outside of that route.
So
I ask you, Mike, did George North know that he was on the transfer list? Or is he
I'm not prepared to comment on any individual, Andy. I don't believe that's appropriate.
WRU said earlier this week that they would rather any transfer dealings, wherever they may be, are done within Wales first. The regional point of view, how do you feel about having your commercial opportunities limited in that way?
No, you will answer that question.
Yeah, look, I think you've got to come back to the PRGB on this and the structural solutions that that body sought to address. There isn't a quick fix, there isn't one fix. Central contracts you've referred to several times, and I understand why the media is being driven towards central contracts as a key issue in this. In and of itself, it doesn't fix anything. I'll quote to you from the PwC report. Centrally contracting the national squad will not address the fundamentals, funding gap and structural issues in Welsh Rugby. The PRGB had mechanisms in there to address a whole range of issues. It looked at our cost base and it looked at our commercial revenue, the two key elements in any business. It had an ability to look at a whole range of structural issues as well as central contracts as part of a wider solution, and it had the ability to look at those by an agreed set of objectives. One of those key objectives was sustainable, competitive, professional rugby in Wales at regional level as well. And another key objective there was to keep young talent in Wales. And there were structures in there which would allow that to happen. So PRGB was vital. We spent a year of hard negotiation in private with the WRU, with the help of PwC, with the help of Stephen Harrison. And I can tell you, it was a very difficult, long process, but we got there. We got there in a sensible and common sense way. We signed a memorandum of understanding. A signed memorandum of understanding. Why is the governing body not now going ahead with that? And if there's any questions, any doubts, I refer you back to Stewart's statement. We are quite happy to submit to an independent arbitrator to assess the agreement contained in the MOU and how that should be taken forward. So, if you like, it's a challenge. We are prepared, because we understand that the attention span for the wider media and for the public, for the detail of all this, is understandably very limited, because everyone's fed up of it, and the public must be fed up of it. We certainly are. So let's not bandy around. We'll go to an independent to get that view. If there's any doubt about where right lies in this, let's put it to an independent. And I think the WRU need to come out and say, yes, we agree, or why they wouldn't agree. If they're confident in their position, they would agree with what we've proposed.
In their statement, the union said that it was the region's interpretation of that memorandum which was unacceptable to the union. Have they said why or how?
Well, you'll understand from Stewart's statement that's not our position, but like I say, we've got the confidence that our position is correct. That was a fairly comprehensive document. It contained a whole range of structural, potential structural solutions. Just as critically, it contained mechanisms to move forward and evolve, to address future challenges, not just the challenges we currently face. It wasn't a hard document to interpret.
Stuart, maybe Stephen could shed some light on whether we're just trying to breathe life into a corpse here, whether 4 regions is unsustainable. We hear 2 million losses for the Ospreys for last year. We see losses everywhere else. 40 million quid over 10 years is a considerable estimate, I'm sure. Is this a dead duck here?
The situation, I think, with the regional finances across, which was part of of the review, was the fact that I think it was in FY11, so July, most of the year ends are, there was £5 million worth of losses incurred by the regions. That reduced to 4 million. That money has been put in by various benefactors who've actually underwritten those losses in the past. The situation is that level of loss and the attraction you can imagine for individuals trying to support that level of losses is pretty untenable going forward at that sort of level. The objective was to try and look at ways of how you could perhaps reduce duplication of costs between the regions and the Welsh Rugby, and look at ways of doing things smarter and better, look at ways of generating income better, Judgment Day and initiatives like that being examples of ways perhaps money could be funded. There was no, as Stuart's already referred to, a single silver bullet which is going to look at this. Looked at central contracts, and that was part of the agenda as well. So there's a whole range of issues, not one of which on its own is going to solve the problem. It is going to be difficult, a problem to solve going forward. The level of losses has been quite substantial. Clearly the regions, in how they've approached trying to balance their own books in this process, have been to reduce costs. And there's no mystery in the fact that the biggest cost obviously is player costs, and controlling that player cost and reducing player costs is how the regions are trying to balance their books. So financially the problem in a sense is being addressed by the regions to balance their books and to look at ways in which they can fund themselves from that point of view in the current structure. The problem with that is that does not make the regions competitive. So to be competitive, they need to spend more money on the squads than is being spent at the moment. And therefore, the way of looking at this was to look at ways in which more money could be generated to provide into those squads. The whole purpose being then that this collective body could look at the evidence and make the rational decisions of how working better and working together could actually free up money in the system to enable that to happen. And that was the role that was seen for the PRGB.
And your view on the union's stance in all this?
Well, the situation is that there is I guess everyone is in the situation of frustration of the way in which it is clear that we will move forward in Welsh rugby is through collaboration and working together. And that's got to be the solution, rather than the way in which it's structured at the moment, which makes it more divisive than collaborative. The fact that we are having the process of the last week is a demonstration of the fact that clearly we're not sitting down and talking of what is best for Welsh rugby.
Stuart, how urgently does this need to be sorted out, and what is...
Sorry, I didn't quite hear the first bit.
How urgently does this need to be sorted out, and what is the worst case scenario?
Well, we are here today to highlight the issues. The letter from Roger Lewis states that they're prepared to meet in their summit with the 4 regions at the end of the month. I'm not sure what the date is today. Is it the 3rd or 4th of April? So that's another 3 weeks down the road. We are continuing to look at our costs, address those issues, and as Steve said, at the moment we are sustainable, we're not competitive, and I'm sure all of you that report on our games in Europe particularly are sick to the back teeth of the hide-ins and the results that we had. That's due to finance, nothing else. We have good players. So, you know, it is up to the Welsh Rugby Union to set the pace here. We did set the pace. Steve was the guy that wrote the Memorandum of Understanding. They signed that understanding along with us. And now it's off the table. So we're back to square one.
Stuart, you say the hammer in some of the regions around Europe is not down to it's down to funding. Is there also a factor it's down to coaching as well? Coaching in Wales?
I'm not getting into that, Andy. This isn't about the coaches in Wales or anywhere else. This is about a fundamental issue that needs to be driven forward by the PRGB to protect and nurture the regional game in Wales.
Stuart, for clarity, have Regional Rugby Wales met with representatives of Foreign League to discuss Welsh regions playing in other interview other competitions?
On behalf of Regional Rugby Wales, I'm always talking to other countries. It's my job. That's all it is. You know, I sit on the board of the RC, I talk to the French, talk to the English, talk to the Scots, Irish, everyone. We want to have the best product possible. What that product is will remain to be seen.
Stephen, you mentioned Judgment Day as a good source of revenue for the 4 regions. In their statement, the WRU said they first offered that as a concept back in 2007, and this was the first year the regions agreed to take from that point. Is that the case in some way?
Going back, I don't know the history, so I can't answer that.
We had a very limited conversation, Ross, very limited. We didn't go into any detail. The fixture list was already set by Magnus, as it was then. There was no financial detail in it, and it was a very much an informal discussion. And it went nowhere. But I do applaud them in this instance, with the cooperation of both the Blues and the Dragons, who give up their home fixtures for the double-header, and it obviously has proved to be a success, and we are delighted at that. So we're not pointing the blame at the union for that. It's a good initiative, but it was done in conjunction with us. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that PRGB is the vehicle to drive those type of things forward. Not a management board that's locked with 5 union votes and 5 RRW votes and no progress. We need an independent chairman taking us forward who has a casting vote, which was agreed to by the union initially.
Stuart, there's a potential problem in this. it goes back to the question I asked earlier about how the union sees the future of regions, especially independent regions. But they're coming at it from an angle where it's sort of top end stuff for them, the Wales team academies, whereas you guys are more concerned about the whole of the Welsh game, from grassroots up, community game, club game, regional game. That they're almost looking for sort of like a business solution, business model. You're looking for a rugby one, and you're operating on parallel lines, which may be one reason why they're not interested in coming to a meaningful agreement.
Well, of course, they are content, in my own personal opinion, to fill the Millennium Stadium X amount of times a year with our players that we pay. Now, when they do that, that's fine for them. It hurts us badly. When our players are away with Wales, we have to bring more players in. But those are issues that I don't really want to comment any greatly on, because as I keep coming back to, that is the role of the RGB. That's why we went into it with our eyes open, to break this old mould of the management board. For example, we had a management board last week that started at 20 to 3 and was all over at 3:30. The chairman rattled through 11 points on the agenda and we all went home. Now, there was no benefit to the regions in that, and I wonder what benefit there was to the WRU. That is not what we had signed up to. We had signed up to a PRGB with an independent chairman. I'm sorry to keep coming back to it, but that is the fundamental question we need answering.
Stuart, the statement you just made, you said you content the WRU content to fill the Millennium Stadium X amount of times a year, yet you were paying the players. Isn't that the very reason why central contracts would take the pressure off you guys?
It depends what you call a central contract. What do you call a central contract, Andy?
Like the ones operating the Southern Hemisphere.
What are they?
Where they've got total control of the player, the union.
The Southern Hemisphere is how many thousand miles away. And if you want to come up from New Zealand to play, you don't play for New Zealand in the future. Right? That's one advantage, where they are. We're in Europe with a thirsty market, particularly in France, and a market in England. Now, we need to keep our best players here. We need collaboration and a smartness to work out how we do that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but how come Mike Phillips is allowed beneath that?
Well, there'll always be, there'll always be players. Look, before the game went professional, we lost players to rugby league.
Yeah.
Hey, you'll always get a trickle of players. What's going to happen here, and please don't think I'm scaremongering, the trickle is now becoming quite significant. And in 2 years' time, if it continues as we are, it'll be a hemorrhage. The best players will all be playing outside Wales. Now, if Roger Lewis can get Regulation 9 release for his international players, he's not that concerned, I don't think, but you ask the question, you'll have to ask him. And I have another point. Andrew, would you like to make your
Just
point?
on the Southern Hemisphere with regard to central contracts, they're all different. So Australia is more a top-up system. New Zealand, the provincial unions actually pay the wages of the players, and then when they make a franchise, they go into a fully fledged contract. South Africa, they change the numbers. They only have 50 players as a central contract. The point is, if you're going to keep harping back to the Southern Hemisphere, look at the facts. They're all different, and they suit the needs of that individual nation, and they've worked on that together in a collaborative fashion, which comes back to the PRGB and the PwC report, where they said this is what we should be doing, finding a Welsh solution for a Welsh problem.
Stuart, maybe Andrew, maybe Richard could say how difficult is it operating in a market where more and more money is invested by the WIU in marketing their games and accruing money via the international game and putting pressure on fans going to Euro matches, and if that continues as their partners get bigger and their spending gets more on the international game, how much harder is it going to be to survive?
Look, it's going to be a bit like a broken record. The regions cooperated very fully and transparently with the PwC report. Some of those issues that you just mentioned were looked at, and the benefit of the regions and the WRU cooperating fully together, such that the regions would be able to tap into some of the substantial resources in terms of marketing and commercial that the WU have at their disposal, was absolutely central to the memorandum of understanding which we signed and agreed. So why now back off that? This was a very collaborative approach. Again, I'll quote from the PwC report. The logical solution appears to be a closer and more collaborative approach between the regions and the WRU to address the funding gap. So someone asked the question, I think it was you asked the question, you know, are we flogging a dead horse or to that extent? No, absolutely not.
Who do you collaborate with at the union, I guess, is the other question, isn't it?
Well,
who's an ally?
That's a question for the WRU. But the fact is, we spent a year of very long, very difficult negotiations to get to a signed agreement. And you know, you guys are savvy. You know that what's happened in the last week isn't an isolated thing. It's part of a strategic, well thought through, well funded PR campaign to achieve a purpose. Your question is, what's the purpose?
So the removal, Stuart, of one key character on one side, would that make the relationship a bit easier?
That's not a comment for us to make. That is for the people who can make those decisions. We can't make those decisions. It's up to others. All we are saying is, all we've done here today is produce the facts honestly and transparently of what has happened vis-a-vis the corporate speak and press releases of the WRU. We are very confident in what we are saying here today. Why are we confident? Because it's the absolute truth. With regards to individuals, it's not just about individuals, it's about getting together to sort the whole thing out.
Rationally, people at home will be seeing this press conference 300 yards away from the WRU building, and you're not speaking to each other. Wouldn't the solution be, instead of saying then get to us, just to pick up the phone? I don't quite understand how these conversations happen. You talk about this summit, but isn't the solution just to lift the phone and speak to each other?
We are available at any time to speak to the WRU. They chose on Saturday to attack us through the media. It makes it very difficult then to turn the other cheek.
Do they know you're having this press conference and have this in the statement?
No idea.
Will you pass it on to them?
No idea.
Do you not think that would be in the spirit of transparency and cooperation a useful thing to do?
Well, I'm sure you will, Rob. So.
Well, no, I'm asking whether you might have.
No, why should we? Why should we? Do they?
Well,
do they send?
Exactly what he's saying,
no. Do they send their press request to me? No.
But surely you're going to act a little bit better and bigger than that.
It's not about being better.
Someone to be that little bit bigger and better.
It's not about being bigger and better. It's having a cooperation and a partnership. We haven't got one.
Can I ask Peter and Roger? They've been in the professional game since the start. You've both put a lot of money into Welsh Rugby, perhaps propping up your respective teams and all. What regrets do you have? Do you have any?
Could I, just Peter in particular, you've been the benefactor to Cardiff and the Blues for the best part of 20, 30 years. What do you make of all this?
It's a mess. We all understand that. We've always wanted to have a true, open, honest, equal partnership. We've said that for years, but it's never come about. I see too many people coming and going, passing through the executive body. I sum it up on power, control, divide, conquer, wipe out. I feel that that is an agenda for certain people across the way. It's all about power. It disappoints me that they are not truthful with you, the media or the public, when they say to you that they've offered central contracts to us. What they never told you was the detail of the central contract and who was going to pay for it. So put the record straight. They wanted central contracts, take our assets, and they wanted to take all our money as well. But they never told you that. And they keep on hammering it home. The PRGB is there to resolve all matters. We've signed up to it, they've signed up to it. I've chaired many companies and still do today. I've never ever been on a board where the chairman doesn't have a vote. Ask yourself the question, why don't they want the chairman to have a vote when initially they signed up to him having it? And this is an honourable person, he's a judge. Ask yourself the question, why?